I think what people need to understand, we need great leadership.
I have a family. I have 2 kids.
They called it a victory. They called it historic. They called it the moment women's basketball finally arrived. But what if I told you it was actually a heist? Not the kind with masks and getaway cars. No, this was the kind that happens in boardrooms. The kind where billion-dollar smiles hide billion-dollar betrayals. The kind where the people who built the house get locked out of their own front door. Right now, as you're watching this, the WNBA is tearing itself apart from the inside. Players are furious, agents are making phone calls, and one name keeps echoing through every single conversation: Caitlin Clark. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. She didn't just change the game on the court. She accidentally exposed a scandal that the league has been hiding for years. A scandal so damaging, so infuriating, that it has players openly questioning whether their own commissioner just sold them out. $2.2 billion. That's the number splashed across every headline. That's the number executives celebrated with champagne toasts and press releases. That's the number that was supposed to prove the WNBA had finally made it. But when you actually look at that number, when you break it down, when you compare it to what Caitlin Clark alone generated for this league in just 12 months, something doesn't add up. And the players noticed. Oh, they noticed. What started as whispers in locker rooms has now become a full-blown revolt. The players' union isn't just angry. They're threatening to burn the whole thing down. And Commissioner Kathy Angelbert? She gave an interview so tone-deaf, so disconnected from reality, that it made everything worse. We're talking about accusations of mismanagement. We're talking about leaked negotiations. We're talking about a deal that may have undervalued the most electrifying talent in women's sports history by hundreds of millions of dollars. But here's what makes this story truly insane. The evidence was always there. The numbers were always public. The opportunity was always obvious. And somehow the people in charge missed it. Or worse, they ignored it on purpose. What? That's exactly what we're going to uncover. Because this isn't just about basketball. This isn't just about contracts and TV rights. This is about power. This is about who gets to profit when a young woman from Iowa becomes the biggest story in sports. And this is about what happens when the people who should be protecting that asset fail her completely. The WNBA is sitting on a powder keg right now. The fuse is already lit. And the explosion? It's going to change everything. So buckle up. Because what I'm about to reveal will make you question everything you thought you knew about this league, this deal, and the woman at the center of it all. Let's start with the number that started the war. $2.2 billion. Say it out loud. Let it roll off your tongue. It sounds massive, doesn't it? It sounds like generational wealth. Like a league finally getting what it deserves. Like justice. But here's the dirty little secret nobody in the WNBA front office wants you to understand. That number is a lie. Not technically, not legally, but practically, it's the biggest misdirection in sports business history. Let me break this down so simply that even the executives who negotiated this deal can understand it. $2.2 billion divided by 11 years. That's approximately $200 million per year. Now, on the surface, that seems like a win. The previous deal was roughly $60 million annually. So tripling your money sounds incredible, right? Wrong. Here's why. That previous deal was negotiated in 2019, before the pandemic, before streaming wars exploded, before women's sports became the hottest investment opportunity in entertainment, and most importantly, before Caitlin Clark. Do you understand what that means? The WNBA negotiated their future based on their past. They walked into a room with nuclear weapons and accepted a payout for a butter knife. But wait, it gets worse. Because this deal wasn't negotiated in isolation. It was negotiated alongside the NBA's media rights package. And that package? $76 billion over 11 years. Let that sink in. The NBA got $76 billion. The WNBA got $2.2 billion. That means the women's league received less than 3% of what the men's league secured. Despite sharing facilities. Despite sharing marketing resources. Despite being part of the same corporate family. 3%. And here's the number that should make your blood boil. In the 2023 to 2024 season alone, the WNBA's television viewership exploded by over 170%. Some games featuring Caitlin Clark drew more viewers than NBA playoff matchups. More viewers than Major League Baseball games. More viewers than some NFL preseason broadcasts. Read that again. A rookie in women's basketball was outdrawing established male professional leagues. She was a walking, dribbling, three-point shooting media phenomenon. Every time she stepped on the court, ratings records shattered. So explain this to me. If one player can generate that kind of attention, that kind of advertising revenue, that kind of cultural momentum, how did the league only secure $200 million per year? The answer is either incompetence or something far more sinister. Let's look at the math more closely. Advertising revenue during high-rated WNBA games skyrocketed. Sponsors who had ignored women's basketball for decades were suddenly begging for placement. Jersey sales went through the roof. Social media engagement exploded. The league was no longer a niche product. It was mainstream. And mainstream products don't accept 3%. So what happened behind closed doors? According to sources close to the negotiations, the WNBA's leadership approached these talks with the same mindset they'd had for years. Grateful, humble, happy to be included. They didn't demand. They asked. They didn't leverage. They hoped. And when the network saw that weakness, they pounced. Because here's what every business negotiator knows. Your leverage is only as powerful as your willingness to walk away. And the WNBA? They never even hinted at walking away. They accepted the first real offer. They celebrated crumbs while a feast was being prepared for someone else. But the players? They weren't fooled. They saw the ratings. They lived the fame. They felt the crowds growing larger, louder, more passionate than ever before. And then they saw their paychecks. Still the same. Still laughably small compared to their male counterparts. Still structured around a deal that treated them like a minor league afterthought instead of the cultural phenomenon they had become. That's when the anger started. That's when private conversations turned into public accusations. And that's when one disastrous interview threw gasoline on an already raging fire. Commissioner Kathy Angelbert was about to make everything so much worse. What happens when the person in charge becomes the biggest problem? What happens when the leader who's supposed to protect you throws you under the bus on national television? The players were about to find out. Commissioner Kathy Angelbert sat down for what should have been a victory lap interview. The deal was signed. The headlines were glowing. All she had to do was smile, say the right things, and let the celebration continue. Instead, she detonated a bomb. When asked about Caitlin Clark's role in the league's success, Angelbert gave an answer so dismissive, so calculated, so politically careful that it felt like a slap in the face to everyone watching. She downplayed Clark's impact. She spread credit so thin it became meaningless. She used corporate language when authentic appreciation was required. And the internet exploded. Within hours, clips of the interview were everywhere. Twitter was on fire. Instagram comment sections turned into war zones. Fans who had just started caring about the WNBA felt insulted on behalf of the player who brought them there. But here's what made it even worse. The players agreed with the fans. Privately at first. Text messages flying between teammates. Group chats lighting up with frustration. Veterans who had fought for recognition for over a decade were furious that their commissioner couldn't simply acknowledge the obvious. Caitlin Clark changed everything. That's not an opinion. That's arithmetic. That's ratings data. That's ticket sales and merchandise revenue and social media metrics that don't lie. And yet the commissioner couldn't say it. What? Some speculated she was trying to protect veteran players from feeling overshadowed. Others suggested internal politics were at play. A few conspiracy theorists pointed to Nike contracts and sponsorship conflicts. But the players didn't care about the why. They cared about the what. And what they saw was a leader who couldn't tell the truth. A commissioner who seemed more concerned with managing narratives than acknowledging reality. A figurehead who was supposed to be their champion but instead made them feel invisible. One anonymous player put it perfectly in a leaked message. She had one job, one interview, one chance to show the world that she understands what's happening. And she blew it. But the interview wasn't just bad optics. It revealed something deeper, something more troubling. It suggested that the league's leadership was fundamentally disconnected from the moment they were living through. Think about it. You have a product that's experiencing unprecedented growth. You have a rookie who's generating more buzz than your entire league has seen in 3 decades. You have networks suddenly interested in bidding wars. You have sponsors throwing money at anything connected to women's basketball. And your response is caution? Your strategy is deflection? Your public message is, well, it's a team effort? No. Leaders who understand momentum don't hedge. They capitalize. They amplify. They ride the wave with everything they've got. But Angelbert? She seemed afraid of the wave. And that fear cost everyone. Because here's what was happening behind the scenes while the commissioner was fumbling interviews. The players' union was organizing. Quietly at first. Phone calls between representatives. Meetings with lawyers. Analysis of the new deal structure and what it meant for player revenue sharing. And what they found horrified them. The new media rights deal, despite its massive headline number, contained provisions that severely limited how much players would actually see. Revenue sharing percentages, escrow clauses, performance-based triggers that seemed designed to delay real salary increases. In other words, the league secured billions. The players secured promises. And in professional sports, promises are worthless without contracts to back them up. The union started making noise, first internally, then to media members they trusted. Then, finally, in a statement that shocked the sports world. They threatened to opt out of the current collective bargaining agreement. They threatened to strike. They threatened to shut down the entire WNBA season if their demands weren't met. And just like that, the celebration was over. The powder keg everyone had been ignoring was about to explode. A strike. Let that word hang in the air for a moment. The WNBA, at the peak of its cultural relevance, at the exact moment when the world was finally paying attention, was about to tear itself apart. And the craziest part? The players weren't bluffing. They couldn't afford to. See, there's a clause in the current collective bargaining agreement that most fans have never heard of. It's called the opt-out provision. And it gives the players' union the legal right to terminate their deal early if they believe the financial landscape has fundamentally changed. Guess what? Caitlin Clark changed the financial landscape. The union's lawyers had been studying the numbers for months. Viewership data, advertising rates, sponsorship valuations, merchandise splits. Every single metric that determines how much money is actually flowing through the league. And their conclusion? The players were getting robbed. Not figuratively, not metaphorically, mathematically robbed. Under the current structure, WNBA players receive approximately 50% of league revenue. That sounds fair, right? That's similar to what NBA players get. But here's the catch. That 50% is calculated based on a revenue figure that the league controls. A figure that can be manipulated through accounting practices, expense classifications, and corporate structure decisions that players have zero visibility into. In other words, the league decides what counts as revenue. And whatever they decide, the players get half. You see the problem? If the league says revenue is $100 million, players split $50 million. But what if the real number is $200 million, and the league buries half of it in operational expenses or parent company allocations? The players would never know. And the union suspected this was exactly what was happening. They requested full financial audits. They demanded transparency. They asked for documentation that would prove exactly how much money was flowing in and where it was going. The league's response? Silence. Not denial. Not pushback. Just nothing. Weeks passed. Requests went unanswered. Lawyers hit dead ends. The union grew more suspicious with every passing day. And then someone leaked the projections. Internal documents. Revenue forecasts. Advertising estimates for the next 5 years. Numbers that should have been confidential appeared in reporter inboxes. Numbers that told a very different story than the one the league was presenting publicly. According to these leaked projections, the WNBA's actual revenue potential over the next decade wasn't $2.2 billion. It was closer to $5 billion. Maybe more. The league had valued itself at less than half of what internal analysts believed it could generate. They had walked into negotiations with a lowball self-assessment and then accepted a deal based on that diminished figure. Why? There are only two explanations. Either the leadership was catastrophically incompetent. They simply didn't understand the value of what they were selling. They brought checkers to a chess match and got demolished. Or they knew exactly what they were doing. They understood the real value. They had access to the same projections. They saw the same growth curves. And they chose to leave money on the table anyway. But that raises an even darker question. If they knew, who benefited? Because somebody always benefits. In every negotiation, in every deal, there's a winner on the other side of the table. The networks, the parent companies, the executives whose bonuses were tied to closing deals quickly rather than maximizing value. Somebody celebrated when that $2.2 billion figure was locked in. Somebody knew they got the bargain of a lifetime. And somebody was going to have to answer for it. The players had seen enough. The leaks confirmed their worst suspicions. The silence from leadership told them everything they needed to know. It was time to fight. Union representatives scheduled a press conference. Media outlets were notified. The statement was being drafted. The nuclear option was on the table. But just before they went public, something unexpected happened. A phone call came through from Caitlin Clark's agent. And what he said changed everything. One phone call. That's all it took to shift the entire battlefield. Caitlin Clark had stayed silent throughout the controversy. No tweets, no interviews, no public statements about the deal, the commissioner, or the growing revolt among her fellow players. Her silence was strategic. Her agent had advised her to stay above the fray. Let others fight. Let the story develop without her name attached to every headline. Protect the brand while the chaos unfolds. But behind the scenes, Caitlin was furious, and her agent was about to prove it. The call went directly to the union's lead negotiator, a woman named Terry Jackson who had been fighting for WNBA players since before most current athletes were born. Jackson had seen every tactic, every stall, every corporate maneuver designed to keep players underpaid and undervalued. But she had never received a call like this. Caitlin wants in. 3 words that changed the calculus entirely. Because here's what you need to understand about leverage in professional sports negotiations. Players have power. Unions have organization. Lawyers have expertise. But superstars? Superstars have nuclear weapons. When a player of Caitlin Clark's magnitude publicly aligns with a labor action, it stops being a contract dispute. It becomes a cultural moment. It becomes headline news. It becomes something that casual fans, corporate sponsors, and network executives cannot ignore. And Caitlin wasn't just offering support. She was offering testimony. Her agent had compiled a dossier. Documents. Recordings. Communications between Clark's representation and the league office that painted a disturbing picture. During Caitlin's rookie contract negotiations, her team had requested specific accommodations, marketing commitments, revenue sharing arrangements tied to her individual impact, protections that recognized she wasn't just any player joining any team. She was the reason the stands were full. She was the reason networks were bidding. She was the reason jersey sales had increased by over 600%. And the league's response to her reasonable requests? Flat rejection. Not because they couldn't accommodate her. Not because the demands were unreasonable. But because accommodating her would set a precedent. It would force the league to acknowledge that individual players could generate individual value. And that acknowledgement would threaten the entire salary structure. See, the WNBA operates on a model of manufactured equality. Maximum salaries are capped. Endorsement revenue is the only way to earn what you're actually worth. And the league benefits from this structure because it keeps overall costs low while still extracting maximum value from star players. Caitlin Clark's mere existence threatened this model. If the league admitted that she was worth more than the maximum salary, if they acknowledged that her economic impact dwarfed the salaries of everyone around her, the entire system would collapse. Other stars would demand recognition. Salary floors would become obsolete. The league would have to pay players what they actually deserve. And that scared the hell out of the people in charge. So they rejected Caitlin's requests and bet that she would stay quiet. They gambled that her gratitude at being in the WNBA would outweigh her frustration at being undervalued. They gambled wrong. Her agent had receipts. Emails showing league executives privately celebrating her signing while publicly refusing to acknowledge her impact. Memos discussing managing the Clark narrative to avoid setting compensation precedents. Meeting notes that revealed coordinated messaging designed to minimize her leverage. The league wasn't just undervaluing Caitlin Clark. They were actively working to suppress her power. And now she had proof. The union had their nuclear weapon. Caitlin had her vindication. And the commissioner? She was about to face the fight of her professional life. But before the press conference could happen, before the documents could be released, before the world could see what had really been going on, someone from inside the league reached out. Someone high up. Someone who wanted to make a deal. The message was simple, direct, and absolutely terrifying. If those documents go public, you have no idea what happens next. A threat, wrapped in professional language, delivered through proper channels, but a threat nonetheless. Someone inside the WNBA's leadership structure had just drawn a line in the sand, and they weren't bluffing. The message arrived through an intermediary. A well-known sports attorney who had represented league interests for years. Someone with enough credibility that the union couldn't simply dismiss the communication as posturing. His exact words, according to sources who were in the room: "If those documents go public, you have no idea what happens next." The union's legal team huddled immediately. What did that mean? What could the league possibly do? What weapons did they have that hadn't already been deployed? Then someone pulled up Caitlin Clark's contract. And there it was. Buried in Section 14, Subsection C, Paragraph 3, a morality clause. But not just any morality clause. This one had been specifically modified, expanded, weaponized in ways that standard player contracts never included. Under this provision, the league could terminate Caitlin's contract if she engaged in any activity that, materially damaged the reputation, financial interests, or operational stability of the league or its partners. Read that again. Any activity that damaged financial interest. Participating in a labor action could qualify. Releasing confidential documents could qualify. Even publicly criticizing the commissioner could potentially qualify under an aggressive interpretation. The league had built a legal trap, and Caitlin Clark had signed it without fully understanding what she was agreeing to. Her agent was livid. He had reviewed the contract. His legal team had reviewed it. But this clause had been buried so deep, written so carefully, that its true implications only became clear when weaponized. The league wasn't just playing defense. They had planned for this moment. They knew eventually that their biggest star might become their biggest problem. They knew that someone with Caitlin's platform, Caitlin's influence, Caitlin's growing awareness of her own value might one day challenge the system. So they built a cage before she even arrived. A golden cage, sure, filled with endorsement opportunities and media attention and the adoration of millions. But a cage nonetheless. And now the door was swinging shut. The union faced an impossible choice. Option 1. Proceed with the press conference. Release the documents. Let Caitlin stand with her fellow players. But risk the league invoking that contract clause. Risk Caitlin losing everything. Risk turning their biggest ally into a cautionary tale. Option 2. Back down. Accept whatever compromise the league offered. Protect Caitlin but abandon the fight. Watch as the moment slipped away. Wait another decade for another opportunity that might never come. Neither option felt like winning. But while the union debated, something else was happening. The leak had already begun. Not from the union. Not from Caitlin's team. Not from anyone who was supposed to have access to those documents. Someone else had copies. Someone inside the league itself. And they were tired of watching from the shadows. The first document appeared on a journalist's desk at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. No return address. No cover letter. Just a manila envelope containing internal revenue projections that contradicted everything the commissioner had said publicly. By noon, 3 more journalists had received similar packages. By evening, the sports media world was on fire. WNBA internal documents reveal massive revenue discrepancy. League leadership accused of hiding true financial picture. Anonymous source claims commissioner knew real value all along. Headlines exploded across every platform. And the union realized something extraordinary. They hadn't released anything. Caitlin hadn't released anything. Someone else was fighting this battle for them. Someone with access. Someone with motive. Someone who had been inside the room where the betrayal happened and decided they couldn't stay silent anymore. A whistleblower. The question now wasn't whether the truth would come out. It was already out. The question was, who had the courage to release it? And why now? The answer would shock everyone. The whistleblower had a name. And when it leaked, nobody could believe it. For 3 days, speculation ran wild. Sports journalists offered theories. Social media detectives analyzed document metadata. Everyone assumed it was a disgruntled assistant, a fired executive, maybe a player's spouse with access to private files. Nobody guessed the truth, because the truth was impossible. The documents had been leaked by someone inside the commissioner's own office. Someone who had sat in every major negotiation meeting. Someone who had watched Kathy Angelbert make decision after decision that prioritized speed over value. Her own deputy commissioner, a woman named Sandra Chin, 15 years with the league, impeccable reputation, known as a quiet operator who avoided spotlight and controversy at all costs. The kind of executive who sends birthday cards to colleagues and remembers everyone's children's names. And she had just committed career suicide. But why? That answer required understanding what Sandra had witnessed over the past 18 months. The moments that slowly transformed a loyal executive into a revolutionary. It started during the initial media rights discussions. Sandra had prepared extensive analysis for those meetings. Viewership trends, demographic data, advertiser interest surveys, streaming platform valuations. She had built the most comprehensive valuation model in league history. Her conclusion? The WNBA's rights were worth between $4.50 and $6 billion over a 10-year period. Conservative estimates put the floor at $4 billion. She presented this analysis to Commissioner Angelbert in a private meeting. Printed copies, digital backup, detailed methodology that could withstand any scrutiny. Angelbert thanked her for the work. Then she threw it in the garbage. Not metaphorically, literally, right in front of Sandra. She walked to her office trash can, dropped the entire presentation inside, and said words that Sandra would never forget. "The owners don't want that number out there." Sandra was stunned. "What do you mean?" she asked. Angelbert explained it like she was teaching a child. The WNBA's owners weren't independent operators. Most were directly connected to NBA franchises. Same corporations, same family offices, same investment groups. And those entities had relationships with networks. Long-term, multi-billion-dollar relationships. If the WNBA demanded maximum value for its media rights, it would complicate negotiations for the NBA's far larger package. It would create tension with broadcast partners. It would potentially delay the men's deal while women's rights were resolved. The owners didn't want complications. They wanted smooth. They wanted quick. They wanted the WNBA to take whatever was offered so everyone could move on to the bigger prize. The women's league was being sacrificed. Not accidentally. Deliberately. Sandra felt sick. But she stayed quiet. She told herself there must be more to the story. There must be considerations she wasn't seeing. Maybe the commissioner was playing a longer game. Then the negotiations happened. And Sandra watched in horror as everything unfolded exactly as she feared. The league's negotiating team entered discussions without their most powerful weapons. They didn't reference Caitlin Clark's viewership impact. They didn't cite the 170% ratings increase. They didn't leverage the surge in merchandise revenue or the waitlist for season tickets or the social media explosions that accompanied every Clark highlight. They negotiated like it was 2019. Like the revolution hadn't happened. Like the most valuable player in league history didn't exist. Sandra raised concerns internally. She wrote memos. She requested meetings. Every single concern was dismissed. "Focus on your job," Angelbert told her. "This is above your pay grade." But Sandra couldn't let it go. She started keeping copies. Every internal document. Every revenue projection. Every meeting transcript. Everything that showed the gap between what leadership knew and what they did. And when the deal was signed, when the champagne was poured, when Angelbert gave interviews celebrating a victory that Sandra knew was a surrender, she made her decision. The truth had to come out. Even if it destroyed her career. Even if she never worked in sports again. Even if everyone she respected would call her a traitor. Because some betrayals are too big to ignore. And the women who built this league, the players who sacrificed their bodies in their prime years, the fans who believed that things were finally changing, they deserved to know. Sandra packaged the documents. She found journalists she trusted, and she set the world on fire. But the flames were just beginning to spread. The commissioner's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Board members, owners, network executives, lawyers, everyone demanding answers. Everyone wanting to know how internal documents had ended up on the front page of every sports publication in America. And Kathy Angelbert had no answers. Because she still didn't know it was Sandra. For 48 hours, the commissioner's office operated in full crisis mode. Emergency meetings. Damage control strategies. Legal teams analyzing whether they could sue the journalists who published the leaks. They couldn't. First Amendment protections. Source confidentiality. The same laws that protect whistleblowers in government applied here. The truth was out, and there was no putting it back. But Angelbert wasn't ready to surrender. She called a press conference. Against the advice of her communications team. Against the warnings from board members who wanted her to stay quiet. Against every instinct that should have told her the hole was already deep enough. She grabbed a shovel and kept digging. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. Eastern. Every major sports network carried it live. Social media platforms flooded with viewers waiting to see how the commissioner would respond. Angelbert walked to the podium looking confident, composed, like someone who believed she could still control the narrative. Her opening statement lasted 12 minutes. She denied nothing, but she admitted nothing either. Instead, she reframed. She contextualized. She deployed corporate language so dense that casual viewers couldn't follow what she was actually saying. The documents in question represent preliminary analysis that was one of many inputs into our comprehensive negotiation strategy. Translation: we ignored the data. Our final agreement reflects the culmination of extensive discussions that balanced multiple stakeholder interests. Translation: we prioritized owners over players. I remain confident that this deal positions the WNBA for sustainable long-term growth. Translation: I have no intention of admitting I was wrong. Then came the questions. And that's when everything collapsed. A reporter from ESPN asked the question everyone was thinking. Commissioner, the leaked documents show internal projections valuing the WNBA's media rights at nearly double what was ultimately negotiated. How do you explain that discrepancy? Angelbert smiled. It was the wrong response. I would caution against placing too much weight on preliminary projections. Many factors influence final valuations that aren't captured in early analysis. The reporter followed up. What factors specifically? Pause. A long pause. The kind of pause that happens when someone realizes they don't have an answer. The kind that fills living rooms across America with uncomfortable silence. I'm not going to get into proprietary negotiation details, but the damage was done. Everyone watching saw it. The hesitation, the deflection, the inability to provide a single concrete justification for leaving billions of dollars on the table. Social media erupted in real time. She has no answer because there is no answer. This is what accountability-free leadership looks like. The players were right. She sold them out. But the worst moment was still coming. Another reporter raised her hand. Commissioner, sources indicate that the whistleblower who leaked these documents is a current member of your senior staff. Do you have any comment on that? The color drained from Angelbert's face. She didn't know. Until that exact moment, she genuinely didn't know the leak came from inside her own office. Her response was barely audible. I'm not aware of. We're investigating all possibilities. The reporter pressed harder. So you're saying someone in your inner circle had access to these documents and chose to expose them? What does that say about the trust within your own leadership team? Angelbert stammered. She looked off camera, searching for help that wasn't coming. Then she did something that would define her legacy forever. She walked away. Mid-question. Mid-press conference. With cameras still rolling and journalists still shouting questions. She simply turned and left. The image played on repeat for the next 72 hours. The most powerful woman in the WNBA literally running away from accountability. And somewhere, watching from her apartment, Sandra Chin allowed herself a small smile. The truth was finally free. But the war was far from over. The commissioner had run. But she couldn't hide forever. Within hours of that disastrous press conference, the WNBA's Board of Governors called an emergency meeting. 12 team owners. Billions of dollars in combined wealth. And one very simple question on the agenda. Should Kathy Angelbert be fired? The meeting was supposed to be confidential. Closed doors. No media. No leaks. It lasted 11 minutes. And someone recorded everything. The audio would surface weeks later. But the decision was immediate. By a vote of 9-3, the board determined that Commissioner Angelbert had lost the confidence of players, fans, and now her own leadership team. She would be given the opportunity to resign. If she refused, termination would follow within 48 hours. Angelbert chose resignation. Her statement, released through attorneys, was carefully worded to avoid any admission of wrongdoing. She cited personal reasons and a desire to pursue other opportunities. She thanked the league for the chance to serve. She wished the players continued success. She never apologized. Not for the undervalued deal. Not for the dismissive interviews. Not for the years of suppressing data that showed the league's true worth. She simply vanished. But her departure solved nothing. The deal was already signed. The $2.2 billion was locked in for 11 years. No amount of executive shuffling could undo the damage. And the players knew it. Terry Jackson, the union's lead negotiator, released a statement within hours of Angelbert's resignation. A change in leadership is welcome but insufficient. The players of the WNBA did not fight for a symbolic victory. We fought for economic justice. And economic justice requires renegotiation of the media rights agreement. Renegotiation. The word sent shockwaves through the sports business world. Media rights deals don't get renegotiated. They're contracts, legal documents, binding agreements between billion-dollar entities with armies of lawyers. You don't just ask for more. Except the players weren't asking. They were demanding. And they had leverage nobody expected. See, when Sandra Chin leaked those documents, she didn't just expose revenue projections. She exposed something far more damaging. Evidence of bad faith negotiation. Emails showing league executives deliberately misrepresenting the WNBA's value to ownership groups. Memos discussing strategies to manage player expectations by hiding favorable market data. Communications that suggested the league entered negotiations knowing they could get more and choosing not to. In contract law, this matters a lot. When one party enters an agreement with information they deliberately concealed from stakeholders who had a legal right to that information. the agreement becomes vulnerable. The players' union hired the most aggressive sports litigation firm in the country. Their argument was elegant. The collective bargaining agreement between the WNBA and its players required good faith negotiation on all matters affecting player compensation. Media rights revenue directly affected player compensation. Therefore, the league had a legal obligation to maximize that revenue. By deliberately undervaluing their rights, the league violated the CBA. The entire media deal could be challenged. Networks panicked. Suddenly, the contracts they thought were locked in became uncertain. The broadcast schedules they had planned became questionable. The advertising they had sold became potentially problematic. Lawyers started making very uncomfortable phone calls. And in the middle of all this chaos, one voice had remained notably silent. Caitlin Clark, the woman who started all of this. The player whose talent exposed the cracks. The rookie whose popularity revealed just how undervalued the league truly was. She hadn't given a single interview since the scandal broke. Until now. Her agent called 3 major networks simultaneously. Caitlin wants to talk. Tomorrow. What? Unedited. The networks fought for the exclusive. ESPN won. And what Caitlin Clark was about to say would reshape the entire conversation. She was done being silent. She was done being used. And she was about to tell the world exactly what she really thought. The world stopped. At 8 p.m. Eastern, every screen in America seemed to tune to the same channel. Bars switched from games to ESPN. Families gathered around living rooms. Social media fell into an anticipatory hush. Caitlin Clark was about to speak, and everyone knew this moment would matter. The interview set was simple. 2 chairs. Soft lighting. No audience. Just Caitlin, journalist L. Duncan, and approximately 47 million people watching from home. The largest audience for a sports interview since Michael Jordan's retirement announcement. For a 23-year-old basketball player. Let that sink in. L. Duncan opened with a simple question. Caitlin, you've been silent throughout this entire controversy. Why speak now? Caitlin took a breath, and then she did something nobody expected. She started crying. Not dramatically, not performatively. Just quiet tears streaming down the face of the most famous athlete in women's sports. Because I'm exhausted, she said. Because I came into this league believing it would be different. Believing that if I worked hard enough, played well enough, brought enough fans to the game, things would change. That the women who came before me would finally get what they deserved. That the women who come after me would have it easier. She wiped her eyes. And instead, I watched them sell our future. I watched them celebrate a deal that treated us like an afterthought. I watched the commissioner go on television and pretend like I didn't matter. Like we didn't matter. Elle leaned forward. The league has argued that this deal represents significant growth. That tripling the previous agreement is a major victory. What's your response? Caitlin laughed. But there was no joy in it. My response? My response is that I generated more revenue for this league in my rookie season than they negotiated an average annual value. Me. One player. 1 year. More than $200 million in direct economic impact when you count ticket sales, merchandise, advertising premiums, and sponsorship increases. She held up one finger. One player. 1 year. And they locked us into 11 years at that number. The number hung in the air. So no, Caitlin continued. I don't accept that this was a victory. This was a surrender. And the people who surrendered weren't playing with their own money. They were playing with ours. With the careers of women who sacrificed everything for this sport. With the dreams of little girls watching at home who want to grow up and get paid fairly for their talent. I'll ask the question everyone wanted answered. What do you want to happen now? Caitlin looked directly into the camera. This was the moment. I want the deal renegotiated. I want the networks to come back to the table. I want the league's new leadership, whoever that ends up being, to fight for us the way we fight on the court. And I want every player in this league to know that I will stand with them. Whatever that takes. Whatever it costs me personally. She paused. I don't care about being liked by executives. I don't care about being a good soldier. I care about being fair. And this wasn't fair. The interview continued for another 40 minutes. Caitlin discussed the contract clause that had been used to threaten her. She praised Sandra Chen's courage. She called for transparency in all future negotiations. She demanded that player representatives be present in every financial discussion. But the moment everyone would remember came at the very end. Elle asked one final question. Caitlin, there are people who say you're being ungrateful. That you should be thankful for the opportunity to play professional basketball. That you're making millions from endorsements anyway. What do you say to them? Caitlin smiled. For the first time, a genuine smile. I say thank you for proving my point, because that's exactly the mentality that got us here. The idea that women should be grateful for crumbs. The idea that we should just be happy to be included. The idea that asking for fairness is somehow ungrateful. She leaned forward. I'm not ungrateful. I'm ambitious. And this league should want ambitious women. Because ambitious women don't just fill arenas. They build empires. And if the WNBA lets us, that's exactly what we're going to do. The screen faded to black, and the sports world exploded. The networks returned to the table. Under threat of litigation, under pressure of public opinion, under the weight of undeniable evidence. They renegotiated. The new deal? $4.1 billion over 11 years. Nearly double the original agreement. The players' union ratified a new collective bargaining agreement with unprecedented revenue-sharing provisions. Minimum salaries increased by 85%. Maximum salaries nearly tripled. For the first time in WNBA history, star players could earn what they were actually worth. Sandra Chin was hired as the league's new chief financial officer. Commissioner Angelbert was last seen consulting for a mid-level sports marketing firm. And Caitlin Clark? She won MVP in her second season. She led her team to the WNBA finals. She signed endorsement deals worth more than any female athlete in history. But ask her about her proudest accomplishment? She'll point to the new contract. The one that ensures every woman who picks up a basketball has a fair shot at fair pay. The one that proves what happens when someone refuses to stay silent. The one that changed everything. Because sometimes the biggest victories don't happen on the court. They happen when one person has the courage to say what everyone else is thinking. They happen when the truth finally finds its moment. They happen when we stop accepting less and start demanding more. The WNBA will never be the same. And that's exactly the point. If this story moved you, if you believe in fighting for fairness, hit that subscribe button, share this video. And remember, every revolution starts with someone who refuses to stay quiet. See you in the next one.